Thanks for joining me today on this episode of Connected by Water. Today's guest is amazing. It's a good friend of mine named Jimmy Armel. He's a Starbright Pro Staff Captain out of Savannah, Georgia, and he was a 1st Battalion Army Ranger who served 6 tours, and he's seen a lot. So we get pretty deep on this episode, and right now Jimmy hunts and tags great whites out of Savannah, among many other things. But more importantly, he has a foundation called Not Lucky, where he helps veterans like himself who are maybe struggling with everyday life or different things that they've gone through. And he uses fishing and becoming connected by water to really get them through everything, among many other things. So listen to this episode and find out why. This is the Connected by Water podcast, fueled by our very good friends at Papa's Pilar Rum, who remind us never to be a spectator. Special thanks to our sponsors, Starbright, Olakai, Seaward Systems, Parts VU, and Linkteeny for their great support of our show. This episode was recorded from our Seaward Systems studios, located on the eastern edge of the Everglades. I want to tell people like listening and watching that this is the first episode that we are coming to you from our brand new Seaward Studios facility, right? So they're a new sponsor of the show. We're setting up our podcast studio at their location here in Coral Springs, Florida. And this is ground zero where all the Seaward products are made. So if you like see around, you see all the fish cleaning stations and their rod racks and then all the different components that they make and they fabricate right here on premises. And it's really like high quality, systems. I know Robert Arrington from Deer Meat for Dinner uses their products, and Art Sapp from Native Son uses their products, and they stand by it and they do a great job. So that's everything that Connected by Water is about. Everyone that we're associated with is nothing but the best, from Papa's Pilar Rum to Starbright Solutions, to Parts VU, and to Linkteeny and Olakai. So I just wanted to thank all of our sponsors really right off the bat for always supporting our endeavors, and but also being the best companies that they could be, best in class at what they do, and we try to be best in class at what we do as well. So thank you, Seaward Solutions, for welcoming us into your home and giving us a new studio. So I just wanted to start off everything by saying that. So Jimmy Armel, right, is with us today, and I prefaced this in the pre-roll a little bit, who you are, but I just want to really, right off the bat, say that I am personally insanely proud that you're here with us today. I'm probably going to say some things that might make you feel uncomfortable, like complimentary things, like thank you for your service, and you're a freaking hero, and I admire you. Like, I know I admire you greatly. You've seen all the shit that life has to throw at you from every possible angle that God could give you. And, and you're just, I admire you so much, man. I mean, you're my hero.
I appreciate that. That
really
means a lot.
Thank you. And, so we're going to talk about a lot of things today. Some of that, we're going to talk a lot of fishing. We're going to talk about a lot of endeavors that you do with fishing and your charter and your old charter, or your great white hunting, or whatever marine path that you're on. But we're probably gonna also reach to the deepest reaches of your soul and to get your heart.
I'm an open book, brother.
Because that to me is the greatest part about you.
Thanks, I appreciate that.
And that really means the truth. Right off the bat, you're a Starbright guy. You're a Starbright Pro Ambassador, right? And I want to kick everything off by mentioning this week's Starbright Do-Gooder. Right? So it's something we do every episode, right? So the do-gooder is someone who's a steward of our environment and just an all-around conservationist at heart. And I can't find a better way to say that. When I say conservationist at heart, that just means you're a conservation when the cameras are off too.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
so And this week, you know him very well, it's Turner Berwick.
Oh,
right?
man, I was just fishing with him this weekend.
Turner Berwick is our Project CCA do-gooder of this episode from Starbright Solutions. And Turner believes that every trip on the water is a chance to make a difference, right? So when he isn't running the social pages for Starbright and Project CSafe, he's out on his 25-foot Seacraft. That's such a great boat. And picking up every piece of trash he sees. Balloons don't belong in the ocean, and every small effort helps protect the waters we love. So this is just one of the many reasons that Turner is this episode's Project CSafe do-gooder. So congrats, amigo.
Yeah, Turner.
You know Turner very well.
Yes.
And you know that everything here and beyond is true.
Yeah, Turner's like a kid brother to me. We're pretty close.
Yeah, that's cool. So I thought it was pretty cool that with you here that we could announce.
Yeah, that's awesome,
as
man.
the do-gooder for the week. So and remember, if you guys want to nominate a do-gooder in your area, just message us on Instagram. They could win a very special Starbright Solutions prize pack worth over $200, which basically is like one of these big buckets of fun with all these killer products that are behind me here on the wall. We got the salt off, we got the citrus, cleaner degreaser, the Startron enzyme fuel treatment, and the reggae sponge and the stream protectant and the boat wash and all that stuff like that. And one of the coolest part about the Starbright stuff is like, not only is it like super environmentally friendly, it's highly effective.
Yes.
It's like the best product on the market. So it's like, that to me is unheard of. Like, I don't know how you pull off being environmentally friendly and the most effective product in the market, but somehow Gregor has figured it out. So as always, thank you to our other sponsors, Papa's Puli Rome, Starbright, Olokai Seaward Systems, Parts View, and Link Genie for their great support of our show. So, you went fishing with Gregor this weekend down in the Keys? Yeah.
Yep.
How'd you get into it? What'd you get into?
We ended up with a bunch of grouper, three mutton snapper on one of the trips that we took home for dinner.
Right.
Some Spanish, more grouper, and a kingfish.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Some Spanish mackerel, huh?
Yeah. We were messing around on some shallow wrecks, just throwing jigs around, and next thing you know, Greg caught a Spanish, and we had live shrimp, so we started pitching live shrimp out there and catching those. It was a lot of fun. Nice.
Now you're up in Savannah, Georgia, though.
I am.
Right, so what's the biggest difference between these two fisheries to you?
Wow, the biggest. You guys don't have tide down here, or excuse me, you have minimal tide.
Minimal tide, yeah.
The best tide that we're going to have, if we only have a 6-foot tide swing, that's good.
Right.
Ours goes, on a big moon and northeast wind, can exceed 11, 12 feet.
Wow.
So,
that big?
Yeah.
I didn't know that about Georgia.
Yeah,
Really?
Yeah.
11, 12 feet?
That's on like a full moon with a wind and stuff.
Okay.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Right.
Highway 80 going out to Tybee Island, they'll actually have to close it sometimes because the tide will come over the road.
Yeah. So you did 6 tours, right?
Yeah,
when you were in the Army, you were the 1st Battalion Army Ranger?
Yes, I started off in 1st Striker Cavalry Regiment, so conventional unit. So you have like conventional Army and then Special Operations.
Right.
And I started in 1-2 SCR as just a regular old private infantryman. Did a 15-month deployment to Iraq from there.
Okay.
And then I was a team leader in Iraq, and then I re-enlisted while I was in Iraq to go to, it was called RIP back then, but it's basically a selection process to become a Ranger. Past that, went to Savannah, Georgia, where 1st Battalion is, and then did 5 deployments to Afghanistan out of there, doing everything from gunfighting to surveillance and urban surveillance and counter-surveillance stuff.
Okay, we'll get to all the Army stuff in a little bit. Yeah. I want to talk some fishing a little bit first. So you left, it was about 2016, if I remember correctly, right? So you were out then and you started chartering like immediately when you got back home after you left the
I tried. I was physically dependent on booze when I got out, so I was in a really bad place. I was living literally in dog feces in the house, trash everywhere.
Wow.
I mean, dude, I couldn't have people over. I mean, the front was covered by growth, and it was bad. Went to take my own life one night. My dog stopped me, Skiff. He's actually on the side of the boat now. He left us. We lost him to cancer this past year. But then I tried to get a job. The night I almost took my own life, came through that, knew I needed to clean up, almost died in withdrawals, had like a very spiritual experience. And then I applied for 53 jobs. I didn't plan on being a fisherman, I didn't think it was an obtainable thing. I couldn't find a job, and I wasn't shooting for the stars. I just couldn't find one. So what I did is thought about it. So when's the only time I want to be alive? Like, when is the only time I really want to be here? And that answer was when I was fishing. Well, I had a 510 credit score. I was in debt because of my alcoholism. I just gotten divorced. Yeah. I mean, it was a bad place, man. And so I was like, the only way for me to fish every day is to be a charter captain. So I was fortunate enough to find a guy that would bank that would do a loan with my mom co-signing out of state, which is weird on a recreational loan, obviously. Right. We got a really good interest rate. And then Skeeter Boats actually gave me a boat deal out of the chute, man. Right out of the chute, gave me a boat deal. Got it through a place called Custom Marine back home in Savannah. And I got the boat on like February 24th or 26th. I took delivery, and I ran my first charter a day or two later, breaking the boat in. It hadn't fished it. I think I ran 15 or 20 charters on it before I fished it myself. Okay. So I kind of jumped into the deep end. Yeah,
10 toes in right off the bat.
Yeah, but it was one of those things to where it was, if I didn't succeed, the gentleman that sold me the boat was super cautious about it. He was not trying to push anything on me because he knew I told him my situation. I'm I'm a pretty upfront person. Yep. And he was like,
that's what I love about you.
Thanks, man. Well, he was like, hey, man, he's like, you have a Virginia area code. You just got out of the Army. You're still dealing with your addiction stuff. Right. You don't really know many people. How do you think you're going to be a charter captain? It's a localized industry. Pretty much anywhere you go, I would assume. But in Savannah, it was very localized. And I said, man, if I don't make it, like, I'm probably going to choke up a few times. But I was like, if I don't make it, man, I was like, I'm going to die. I was like, it's not a big deal to me if I don't make it. Like, we'll have insurance on the boat or something. I don't know. We'll figure it out, right? And that's how I got my start. I ran 176 charters my first year.
176 in your first year?
Yeah. I was sitting in bars at first, and I would, like, in recovery, and I would wait till somebody to ask a question to somebody else about fishing or what is there to do around here. And I'd wear a t-shirt with my American fishing charters on it, and I'd have a card ready, and I'd go up and I'd just start selling, man.
Yeah, it's like the salesman pounding the pavement, knocking on
doors.
Exactly
what it was. Yeah. Exactly what it was, man. And I mean, I wore the shirt everywhere. I talked to anybody that would listen about it, and then eventually somebody was like, hey, man, you should probably have a website, And got a website, and then actually the third offshore charter I ever ran was 5 miles off the beach there in Sheepshead in March. I ended up on a 6-hour charter. I came back with 160 pounds of sheepshead total weight. You couldn't do anything wrong that day, clearly. Yeah. And then Blair Wiggins caught wind of that. Okay. And then I met Blair, who oddly enough, I used to watch overseas. Yeah, it was the only fishing show I ever watched.
It was Blair that brought you into the fold of the
Blair and the McCabe's. Yep.
Blair's a good dude.
Yeah, man. Yeah, they they got me. I got linked up with Blair. We did a show. Kevin McCabe was up filming, the producer, and then they have RV There Yet now, another Starbright show. And then they were like, hey, you need to come up to Bassmasters with us. Once again, I was very straight up. I'm like, dude, if you're all being nice, great, appreciate it. But if something I need to do, you just need to tell me that. And they were like, you need to do this. Went up and slept on Wiggins' floor in his hotel room because he couldn't find a hotel, and I was poor. And then next day I met Greg. He's like, heard all about you. I have a meeting. Welcome to the pro staff. We'll catch up later. And I was like, what is happening right now?
I imagine that whole, with Greg saying that, like verbatim, like exactly how he said it. Like, this sounds totally like him.
Yeah. And he's like, thank you so much for your service. He's like, I'm sorry I got to be rude. And I turned around to Patrice and I was like, what's a pro staff?
Right.
Like I was like, I kind of knew, dude, I had no idea what was going on.
Yeah.
Man. So
it's something that a lot of people say they are, but they aren't really.
Yeah. And I learned that. So anyway, that was the start. You know, that was my, you know, it was the following winter all that happened. So I met Wiggins in like 2017 when he said he wanted to do the show that March, and we did it like the next February, I think, in 2018 to catch the sheep's head season.
Okay.
So that's how the relationship with Starbright started. A lot of stars aligned, no pun intended, for me to be here right now and doing what I'm doing in general. It's pretty wild.
That's the best part about the Starbright family to me, is that once you're with them, they literally treat you like family.
Oh yeah.
For better and worse. Like if they'll call you out if you're, you know, not like being a good person, but like a family would.
Yeah.
You know what
It's
I mean?
very, very
it's like tough
family-esque.
love kind of thing. And then, but then, like when you shine, they want to see you successful. They want to see everybody in their family successful.
Oh, without it. I mean,
and that's really the best part about being part of Starbright to me.
Oh, without a doubt. I actually called Greg one Christmas, and this is when I was in a really bad mental health place, and was like, you know, this guy's got a million things going on. He's running a company, he's feeding families, he's got, you know, his philanthropy stuff going on. The dude's got a lot going on. And I call him and I'm like, dude, I am not, right? Like, I'm not doing well. If I stay by myself, I'm not going to make it. Like, because he's always like, he and I are fairly close, you know, and he's always like, dude, if you ever need anything, call me, especially when I was in a really bad place. You know, 'cause Greg knew about that, and he said, "Do I need to get you a plane ticket?" I said, "No, a drive would do me good." He's like, "All right, man, I'm in the Keys. Come to me." So I jumped in the truck right then with the dogs and headed south. So he's definitely been there in a lot of ways for me.
That's great.
Yeah,
That's great.
It's pretty cool.
So fishing in Savannah is mostly sheepshead. I'm completely unfamiliar with that fishery.
Yes.
Because right now you're basically a great white hunter.
Right during the winter time, that's
during
what I
winter
do.
time, right?
Yeah, we satellite tag great white sharks and name them after the fallen. So that's a big
tell me
Starbright
about
project.
that fishery, and then go right into the great white stuff, because I know everyone wants to hear about that.
Yeah, so the fishery, man, it's actually a pretty cool fishery. Okay, we're in the armpit of the East Coast, right? So we kind of are tucked in. So that means the continental shelf, the stream, if you will, is 70 miles from
way
us.
out there.
Yeah. So we have a lot of, you know, we have a few artificial reefs 5 to 10 miles off the beach, and we have some 20 to 30. And then we have what we call the snapper banks, which is 100 foot of water, live bottom. That's about 30, 40 miles off the beach.
Okay.
So you're catching a lot of your bottom species, snappers, which we can't keep, but tons of American red snapper, sea bass, triggers, all the bottom stuff. Really good king fishing when it's right. We had like no pogies last year, so the king fishing wasn't as good as it normally was. I don't know if the commercial guys got them or what, but so we have a really good pelagic fish, or like kingfish, cobia, stuff like that, like your reef pelagics. And then on the if you go out to the stream, like we get a really strong mahi run and stuff in the spring. We actually have a good wahoo fishery.
I was just going to ask if you're getting any wahoo.
Yeah, we have a good wahoo fishery that I just got introduced to. That's really cool. But once again, you know, you got to make a ride. Yeah, so you got to have the right weather day. You got to have the pocketbook to do it. You know, you're going to be $1,500 in minimum. You know, on a day out there. So
we get so spoiled down here in South Florida with the wahoo. Like, it's like literally you're a mile or two off the beach, just the high speed trolling. You're done by 8 a.m. and you're in by 9 flying fish. It's crazy. Yeah,
that's we definitely don't have that luxury. It's a full day for us. And then that's kind of what I did running charters and stuff, was targeting mainly anything on the reefs. Mainly it was kingfish and cobia during the summer, and then during the winter time I would transition to sheep's head. Until the white shark came along.
Yeah, so how did you transition to that?
It all started just because I wanted to see one, because I had one circle the boat one time when I was sheep's head fishing.
Right.
And I was like, man, this thing does not care that we're here. This is pretty cool. Like, never seen one of these. Kind of took a sea bass, chuck near it. You know, usually even a shark, a big shark, you can throw something near it, might, you know, kind of move away a little bit and come back. This thing just didn't phase. And it was just... I felt some kind of weird connection, man. It was weird. I was like, shoot, man. Like, this dude's like us, man. He's just rolling out there like, you know, gunfighters get out of the military and there's a big transition, right? You feel like really alone, really isolated. You know, your purpose was war. Now you lost that. So it's like you're just out here roaming along, all beat up and scarred up, just kind of like a white shark, right?
Yep.
Like, so I'm looking at this thing and I'm like, man, that thing's seen a lot, you know? And I wanted to see one like up close and touch it.
I've never seen one.
Really?
In live.
Oh
yeah,
my gosh.
I've never seen one.
I can't see enough of them. They're the most amazing thing.
I've seen every other type of shark you could possibly imagine, but I've never seen a great
sharks
white.
in general are cool when they're not eating the fish off your line. But you know, that white is something else,
right?
Man. His eyes, I mean, and his size, his girth, they're just so wide. They're so incredibly wide.
Massive.
Oh man, I mean, and when people are like, oh, I think I saw a white shark, I'm like, have you seen sharks before? And they're like, yeah, and I'm like, you're going to know if you see one.
Know. Yeah.
Just because an 8-footer is girthier than like a 10-foot tiger shark. Right?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the sheer size. So the first time I hooked one, I was by myself. I was this is when I was in a bad place, and who knows what I was angry about that day. I spent a lot of time angry.
Okay.
And I was like, I'm going fishing. And it was honking about 15, 20 knots out of the northeast, one of those things. So I jumped on my boat and grabbed a rod and just putted out there, threw the anchor, got my bait prepped, threw it out, realized I forgot lead because, you know, I'm throwing a little kid temper tantrum. Then remembered I didn't cut the tail off the bait, so it's just out there oscillating. All this is happening within a minute or so, right? And then, so I throw the chum block over, toss the cardboard, and I'm cutting up my about a 30-pound kingfish that I'd had, and I was chucking it over the side. And I sat up and I saw a dorsal about this big right next to the cardboard. And I'm sitting here like, I just got out here. Like, the boat barely settled on anchor. Next thing you know, I'm hooked up. And this about 15-footer, we have it on GoPro at a long distance, comes completely out of the water on a breach. Full breach, just straight out of the water.
Come on.
And then 3 hours of tug of war, and then she cut me off at the hook, and she swam away like nothing happened. And I was like once you see a great white shark come completely out of the water, you got to see it again.
That sounds like that Nat Geo thing when they're trolling those seals, the fake seals, right?
Yes.
Was it like that?
Yes.
Come on.
I swear,
that's crazy.
And the tail whip, and that was one cool thing. Even in the GoPro video, you could see, like, if you know fishing, like if you're on the water and stuff like we are, like you see it come out and you're like, oh my gosh, that's big. And then the tail whip afterwards really puts it in perspective.
Yeah.
Because you see how far the tail moves and you're just like, holy cow.
And that's like something too, like even just moments like that, but also moments like whether it's a marlin or a sail or just any, like, or even a mako jumping out of the water. Like, it's cool to get things like that on film, and a lot of the artistically, but it's seeing it in the flesh, I'm sure, was just
there's
on another
nothing like
level.
it. Nothing like it.
So you're addicted from that moment on,
yeah,
right?
yeah. I was done. And then, so I'm running the charter business. Things are going good. I'm making more money than I ever thought I would, especially running charter boat. Was very fortunate in a lot of ways. You know, I had the beautiful girlfriend, the Go Fast boat, the 30-footer, the this, the that, the other. You know, all from, you know, mind you, it's 2016. I was nearly homeless with a gun in my mouth.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you fast forward to like 2020 range. I mean, I'm charging more than anybody else in Savannah for trips, and you know, like I said, outside looking in, I had a perfect life, and I just started.
How are you feeling though at that point?
It's terrible.
You're not feeling like
terrible,
you have a perfect life,
terrible.
Right?
No, I had an emptiness inside, and I was trying to fill it with outside things. Right. Like I never cared about money per se. That's probably one reason why retail therapy was a thing for me. I never cared about it per se, but I let it measure my worth. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Like I didn't want to put everything away and and have more than everybody else, but the money I was making, the fish I was catching, all of these outside things I was using to judge my own worth. My self-image was completely shot. If I ever had a positive one, I'm not sure I did, but by this point, like, I think people saw me way up here, but dude, the way I felt, like, I wouldn't wish on any human being. And then there's the guilt that
I understand
comes.
that to some level.
I think a lot of us
Yeah.
do. I think
Yeah.
a lot of people do, man. And everything's about perspective, right? Like people will come at me with stuff like that, whether it's a vet I'm helping, because we help all vets, not just combat vets. And they'll be like, well, they try to compare experiences. They're like, well, you've seen this and you've done this. And I'm like, well, hold on. Like, if somebody just smacks you like this every 5 minutes, eventually it means nothing, right? But if you've never been smacked like that in your entire life and somebody comes up and gives you a bop, you're going to be like, whoa, what's going on, right? So that doesn't make anybody's trauma less, right? It's just perspective.
Yep.
So I was in the worst place. I was way down. I mean, down to the point to where one day I was 80 miles offshore by myself. I went out mahi fishing. I used to fish a lot by myself. It was like my favorite thing to do. Viewers, don't do it. It's not safe. Really bad things can happen, man. People will die like that. So that used to be my thing. I'm out there dragging baits, mahi fishing, and I was like, I'm done with this, man. I'm done. So
Done with what exactly?
life.
Okay.
I set up a spread. I put the boat at 7 knots and put it on autopilot, and I grabbed the pistol, and I was just going to lean backwards off the boat.
80 miles offshore.
Yeah. I was just, because I was like, dude, if I do it like this, like if I lean back, right, and I make the blood spray go that way off of the boat, right, and the wind's going this way, right, if I do that and come off the boat, then my mom won't think I killed myself. She might think I just fell off the boat, So, and like my mom's my best friend, and like I didn't want her to see me get through so much and come so far to have me commit suicide. And then at this point, I had the nonprofit, and I'm like supposed to be, I was helping people, obviously not to my full capability, but I was just so fed up that I was like, I'm done, dude. And finally, what I had said to you out loud a few minutes ago, like a voice in my head was like, dude, you have got a way more Gucci life than you ever imagined you'd have. Like, you literally get paid well to go fishing. Like, and granted, you're taking clients, right? There's this, that, and the other, but at the end of the day, you're on the water, man, all the time. At that point, I was fishing totally over 200 days a year. I mean, living the dream, do whatever I want anytime from, fishing wise. And then, winter time, we were getting ready to get into the, this is actually how the great white shark thing came to fruition. The bad trip.
What do you think that was? What do you think that was that brought you back? Well, you think that was like God's hand?
Oh my gosh, yes. So I've always been a Christian. Probably not what most people think as a Christian, meaning that I'm not huge on organized religion. I'm getting ready to read the whole Bible. I'm getting ready to start that soon with my best friend. She and I are going to read it together. But God has definitely played a huge part in my life. When I was a child, I wasn't. We'll just say I wasn't treated the best by my old man. Nothing crazy physical or anything like that, emotional and mental stuff. But I remember at a really young age, like 7-ish, asking my mom. Yeah, around 7, she was pregnant with my sister. And I asked her, I was like, why does God let us go through all this? And she's like, he's putting you through all this because you're going to use it to help people someday. Right. And dude, she said that to me my whole life. And obviously as an
It's funny how God uses us.
Oh my goodness, and it was all of these things that were happening to me. Like, I literally look at every point of my life, everything that happened leads up to what I'm doing right now with Not Lucky, my organization, my nonprofit. But it's God clearly had a plan. And I mean, some of the close calls I've made it through in and out of combat is just, it's really astounding. Like, we've all had close calls, but it's just been crazy to watch the path, like look back and be like, wow, I'm really where I'm supposed to be.
How much of combat affected that day on the boat?
What, say that again?
How much of combat, if any, affected that day on the boat? Like, how did that affect your life to a point where you've done 6 tours?
Yeah.
Which is a lot, Jimmy.
Yeah, it's a lot.
6 tours is a lot.
So,
like, do you attribute any of that to that? Or
yeah, so I think, So if we
am I inappropriate? For
no, please, no,
okay.
no, not at all.
I don't want to be out of line, but
you're never going to be out. You can ask me anything, brother. No, I'm trying to see how to answer this. Combat, yes. War changes you. You do not go the same. You do not come back.
You've seen like everything.
Oh, the worst, the worst the world has.
You've been in the middle of like the worst situation.
Yeah, we've been in. I mean, I got some buddies that have been in a lot worse than me. But there we go, gauging trauma, right? But at the same time, I loved what I did.
Right.
Our first day on the ground in Iraq, my first time in a vehicle out in country, our convoy hit an IED because we were going to get a guy who just got his legs blown off by an IED. And I remember sitting there.
This is in Iraq.
This is in Iraq and Baghdad. And I remember sitting there, ears ringing and all that jazz, and like feeling this peace I never felt. And then a counselor, when I was preparing to go to my psychedelic therapy the first time, or treatment the first time, she actually said on the phone when I was saying, I broke down when she told me this, she was like, you know why you liked war so much? It's like, what? It's like, what is there not to? And I'm like, what a typical dude there. I'm like, what is there not to like about war? Are you crazy? It's awesome. And she was just like, it was the only chance you've ever had in your life to live in the moment. And I was like, oh, like, holy cow. Like,
because I'm drawing a parallel. It's funny you bring that up right there, because immediately I draw a parallel. This is why you go after great white sharks, because it's the most extreme, biggest, baddest thing on the planet. You know what I mean? And like, tagging one of those has got to give you that whatever feeling of the level you need to be at. Right?
Yeah, it is, and that's
really,
you
want to call it.
That's how it. That's how it
Living
started.
In the moment, right?
Yes, and it's just, it's. I think some people are just naturally drawn to like tougher stuff, right?
Yeah.
I wholeheartedly believe that some of us are wired for things like war. I've seen highly trained dudes get into their first gunfight or be around mortars or getting blown up or a buddy passing away, and they stop. They don't want to be a gunfighter anymore, and they go somewhere else in the military, in the Army after that. I don't shame those guys. I'm glad they recognized it and stepped back instead of getting somebody else hurt.
We're all built differently.
Yeah, and then you get guys that are pretty good at their job, but then they go do one enlistment and they're like, you know what, man, I did my duty, like it was cool, but I'm out. And then you've got this small group of us over here
that do 6 tours
that just can't stop, won't stop until they make us or we die.
And you probably would have still been in the Army had it not been
I would
for
be retired
your TBI,
this year.
right?
Yeah. I went up. There was a unit that's actually where they found out I had brain damage. As I was all messed up. I was up at a unit. There was a Delta Force selection. I was actually up there, like the most premier unit in the world.
Right.
So I was up there at their selection, and something was definitely.
You were up for Delta selection?
Yeah. Wow. I went up there. Yeah, it was pretty cool.
That's impressive.
It was, thanks, man. It was a cool experience. I didn't make it, obviously, but the sergeant major was like, "Hey, dude, you need to go get your MRI. When was your last MRI?" I was like, "Oh, I got one on my back before I came here."
Yeah.
He's like, "What about your head?" It's like, "Why would I get an MRI on my head?" You know.
Mm-hmm.
This was in 2014-ish. Yeah, 2014. And he was like, yeah, man. He's like, you kind of show signs. He's like, of TBI, how many concussions have you had? I was like, I don't know, man. You never told the truth about that stuff.
Right.
And I was like, I don't know, as much as the next guy. Not as many as some, less than others.
Not as much as Tua.
Yeah, like, what's the right answer here? And I wasn't like scared. He was being a good buddy is what he was being. And then he was like, dude, just go get checked out, all right? And he's like, you give me your word. I was like, yeah, man, sure. Man of my word, and I went back and they found a spot on my brain and they were like,
wow.
Yeah. And then went really downward spiral.
Really? That had to affect you. I mean,
it was my purpose.
Yeah.
Like when
sorry to hear that.
It's all good now. I'm where I'm supposed to be, but it was in that moment. I can still remember the feeling of when, because it's like your PA, the battalion surgeon, there was some other random person in the RAM. You're in this little office, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was sitting in like a chair here, and everybody's here. There's a desk here, and then they're like, "Oh, we're going to med board you. We're going to medical retire you," because I had over 10 years in. And they were like, I looked at them. I was like, "So do you give me my homeless veteran will work for food sign?" I was like, I can't do anything, like.
Yeah.
And they're like, and I was like, man. Was like, this means if I got brain damage, I don't even know if anybody would take me to go back to war. And I just all that went through my head was, man, I'll never be able to go to war again. Like, what are you supposed to do after this? I mean, what do you do? You know, everybody needs purpose in life, right? Like, this is why everybody has nonprofits. This is why when rich people get out, stop working or slow down working, they get into nonprofits, right? Because it's a purpose, right? So everybody needs purpose. Well, when you're in your 20s and early 30s or whatever, and your purpose is war, you're going after the worst of the worst humanity has to offer when you're a Ranger. Night after night, banging targets, blowing up doors. You know, if there's a shootout, you're shooting it out and killing bad guys. Hopefully you're capturing them to get information, but you're taking bad guys off the streets. I mean, you're talking these people the bad guys will like literally chain up people with special needs outside the house and they'll let them sleep inside and stuff. Like treat them like I'm not exact. Like that's common.
I believe
that's
you,
common.
That
and what they do to children is young boys is unspeakable in this show. It's terrible. So it's like, you know, for me personally, I kind of forgot why I went to begin with. Like once I saw how the women and kids were treated, like that's all I cared about. I didn't care about the politics behind it. I didn't care, you know, not gonna say I didn't care about 9/11. Clearly I did, but like all of that went out the door.
You're an Avenger at that point.
Oh, at this point you're just like, dude, this has got to stop. Like like the way the women and children were treated. So that's what drove me. To keep going. And after you serve that purpose, like, what do you do? Because that's kind of a big one. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the big leagues right there. You know, I mean
they're dealing with that in Gaza right now.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So, and they're talking about it. They probably weren't really talking about it for Iraq as much, but it's out in the open now.
Oh, it's I always call America the oasis, or an oasis. Well, the oasis, yeah. Because it is so nice. This isn't reality, right? Like this isn't what you and I know in day-to-day life. I wish people would realize, and I think this country, the world would be a lot better place if we all realize how lucky we truly are. Because you don't have to worry about getting stoned to death after you've been assaulted as a woman. You don't have to worry about your son being taken by a group of Taliban leaders to go traveling with them. You don't have to worry about your special needs child being chained up like an animal. Like you don't have to worry about any of that. And for a lot of the world, that's a reality, man. So here we live in this oasis to where it's so good that people can't comprehend that kind of bad. It's so foreign to them. And there's some very bad things and very evil people in the States, don't get me wrong. Sure. But people, we live such a good life, people can't comprehend it. So I
think about that often too when I hear about like the petty things that we complain about, you know, on social media or Fox News, CNN, NBC, whatever, like but the things that people whine and complain about. And all I can think of is like, man, as an American in general, no matter how bad you have it, you don't have it nearly as bad as
there's a small percentage that are really, really, really bad off in America, but another really cool thing about America. Now, some people, a very small percentage, are born into circumstances that they'll never get out of, and that's no fault of them, and it's a terrible thing, but sadly, that's life. But the more the rest of us can prosper, the more we can help those people, right? But there's no other country in this world that a story like mine would happen even. And mine's not even, I mean, it's pretty dramatic and there's some highs and lows, but you know, I'm one generation removed. My grandmother would literally steal food from neighboring farms to feed her brothers and sisters. Like I'm one generation removed and that's it. There's only one generation between me and that. You know, my grandmother's growing up, we didn't have an indoor, you know, I spent over half my time at grandma's. That's your babysitter, right? You didn't there was no daycare. You go to grandma's house. And grandma didn't have a bathtub, a shower, anything like that, or an indoor toilet until 2001. So if you had to use the bathroom, you went to the toilet. If you wanted to take a bath, you literally we had running water. You get water, put it in a wash pan, you heat it up on the wood stove, and you wash off in the kitchen. Everybody's in the living room, in like a 600 square foot house maybe. Perfectly clean, perfectly nice, but I mean, it was very interesting, and there's no other country that...
It doesn't scream amenity.
No, yeah, right? Yeah, dude. And there's no other country in the world where, you know, your grandmother can be like that, your mom do better, and then you do better, and then me have all the mental health issues that I've had.
That's the American dream, right?
It is.
It's like nobody happiness isn't guaranteed, but your pursuit of it is.
Yeah,
right?
and that's the thing, man. It's one place where if you never quit and you show up and do your best at whatever you're doing, you're going to end better than you started. Maybe not dramatically, right? Maybe not as dramatically as myself or you know, these athletes that you hear about that were born with nothing and make millions of dollars. It might not be to that scale, but you will end up better. There's not a lot of places where you can do that with as much ease as it is here. It feels hard, but it's not that hard.
So speaking of getting better, you've been tagging shirts since what, 23, right? 2023, I think you told me before.
Yes.
Right?
Yep. First one, January 8th of 23.
All right, so it's my daughter's birthday.
Is it really?
Well, not 23, but January 8th.
That's awesome.
And it's also Elvis's birthday.
Is it? I didn't know that. Yeah. Oh man, that's cool.
So you've been tagging for like 2 years, right? Basically. What's the progression of that been like, right? And where are you at with it now? And during that journey of tagging sharks over the last 2 years, as I know already, you weren't like 100% right yet, right? Until like recently, a lot of the things that we discussed before, you know what I mean? So how much is the great white shark tagging? How much is the fishing? How much is the Starbright family and all that stuff? They've played a role in the last 2 years to basically getting you to a place where I love this Jimmy. I love the Jimmy before, but this Jimmy's great. You know what I mean? So,
yeah. I'm probably a lot better to be around too. I know it's a lot better living in here than it used to be for sure. So I told you I had to call Greg one Christmas. That was Christmas of 22. I get really messed up December and January. That was December 22. So I go down there and we're talking, you know, very personal talk about life and stuff. Greg sharing things with me, I'm sharing things with him, and he looked at me and said, and this will actually come in if we talk about other things later, but he said, he's like, brother, he's like, I can't imagine. He's like, I don't understand why you feel like you do. He was like, I know it's a real thing. Like, you know, I see you trying to help yourself and it's not working. He's like, just you're building an empire. Just keep doing what you're doing. And I was like, dude, I'm no Elon Musk, bro. I ain't building an empire. I'm not Jeff Bezos. It's like, that's a race. We appreciate the pep talk, big brother. I'm getting in the pool. So we go down in the pool. We're hanging out in the pool. And he's like, yo, dude, what could I do for not lucky, you know, besides like write a check, right? Because that's everybody's answer. Like, hey, what can I do for your nonprofit? I'm like, write a check, bro. You know, anybody asks me that. It's kind of my job.
It's funny. They say like money can't buy you love, right? But it sure the hell matters when you don't have it.
Yes, it does. It really does. Yeah. So he was like, what could I, and then I knew what he was asking. He's like, what could I do to contribute that's going to grow into something? And I was like, dude, if I had a great white shark tagging program, I said, if I can't do something with that, then I should just quit my job. And we changed the subject. And then fast forward, it was a very short time later, Greg's like, yo, dude, I got a lead. We're down at Gray's. Boom, we high five, fist bump with them, get a tag and put it out. I mean, it was, that first one was super special. You know, I got the tag. You know, I told Roxanne from Gray's Fish Tag Research, she's an awesome lady. And I told her, she goes, if you have it out by, no pressure, if you have it out by the end of the season, that'd be great. And I have no idea why I said it. There was no filter, I guess. It was off. Because as soon as it came out of my mouth, I wish I could have grabbed it and put it back. I said, I'll have one in a fish by Monday. This is on a Friday, and I'm in Lauderdale. I drove 7.5 hours down, picked it up, drove 7.5 hours back, slept 3 hours, got on a boat, hooked a 10-footer, lost it, went the next day to fish again. My buddy, who's a triple amputee and has half a hip, he was driving the boat. And then my other buddy, who is his third time ever fishing, leadered the white shark that day.
Come on.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I was like, hey, man.
Are you sat tagging them?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So but we stuck that one. And that felt good. I was in such a bad place, though, Dennis, that it wasn't maybe a month later, and Starbright had a video made for me by Derek. That was like a sizzle reel, kind of like a 60-second thing. It got to the point where a short time after that, I was like just watching this sizzle reel because it didn't feel like it happened. Like in my head, I was like, "You're such a POS. There's no way that you could do that." Like that's how bad it was in here. So then that's what prompted me to go to Ambio Life Sciences to go do the psychedelic therapy. So I tagged that first white shark January 8th, and then the week of April, it was like April 16th or 14th through the 20th, I went there. And then after that was life-changing, and everything really started coming together. And during that trip, pun intended, that's also where I decided to quit running the for-profit and concentrate on the non-profit. You do a medicine there at Ambio Life Sciences called 5-MeO-DMT. They do the synthetic version, but it's the poison from the bofu toad. It's dried out and you smoke it, and it's a 10 to 15 minute journey, completely out of body. They call it the God molecule. If done correctly, you experience complete ego death or ego dissolution, and it's breakthrough to pure bliss.
So this is in the April after you've
tagged
your first shark.
Yep.
Okay.
So we're April of 23.
Okay.
So I took Ibogaine the night of the 18th going into the 19th, and that kind of emptied.
Where did you do this?
Tijuana in Mexico. So if you go through ambio.life is the website. That's the place I go through. That's the place to go to.
Okay.
They actually support our boat now. We got them on the side of our boat. But that's the place to go. You fly into San Diego. They pick you up at a hotel, and then they drive you 20 to 40 minutes, depending on which house you're at in Mexico, in a very nice neighborhood, set you up, chef, massage, yoga, the whole nine.
Sounds lovely.
It really is. It really is. I've been a couple of times, and it's really cool going back when you're in a better headspace and can really enjoy everything. But yeah, the Ibogaine kind of cleared.
So they really take care of you.
It's not, you're not going to.
So you just go to Mexico to trip out.
Right. A lot of people, when you hear that, and because of the stereotypes in our minds, and then also because of there are some bootleg operations.
It's not like going to Burning Man and having an experience.
No. There's doctor, medical staff. You're getting fluids in you the whole time. Clean food, no sugar, no caffeine.
Okay.
And it's they have you hooked up to an EKG the whole time. He's an Ibogaine journey now. Ibogaine's a long one.
Right.
You'll be peaking for about 6 hours.
Come on.
Oh yes, sir.
That's a long time to be peaking.
It's a long time. It can be a bumpy ride, but it's the most.
You've done that.
I've done that 3 times.
Okay.
Most people are one and done. I'm an enthusiast. It's and also, all jokes aside, it makes you better, right? So the most interesting thing about Ibogaine to me, because it deals with trauma and all that, like a lot of psychedelics do. But for me, guys like myself, it's the physiological effects, okay? So you look at guys like me, we all have TBIs because of explosions and getting beat up and falling down or whatever, which a lot of people with mental health issues have addiction issues, right? So now you got brain damage and
When
addictions.
did you stop drinking?
I stopped drinking. I relapsed in like 17, 18.
Okay.
So I stopped in 16, had 1 relapse. So I've been sober since 17, 18, somewhere in there. So what Ibogaine does, and that's the bark of a root of a bush. We bounced around there. That was my bad. It's the bark of a root of a bush found in West Africa. That's all it is root bark. So they put it in a capsule. You're not eating root bark. So you take it, you go under, you have an eye mask on. So if it gets too crazy, you can take your eye mask off and you're right back in the room. Like you can shut that one off. You'll still feel like, ooh, but you're not like, you're not like in a place you can't come back. So things are getting
Right.
a little hairy. You can boom, look around, and be like, okay, yeah, I'm good.
How close is all this to like what Aaron Rodgers did, like before he?
It's
decided-
very similar.
Right.
So they call ayahuasca. I'm actually going to Peru and right before ICAST.
Okay.
I got a guy that's sending me there for 2 weeks. I'm going to do 8 ayahuasca journeys.
8?
They said that's the way. He said that's the best way to do it. I said, okay, man.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
gonna be a good one. And you do 5 there too. You do the toad and 2 other medicines that I forget what they are, but they were minuscule compared to the other ones. To me.
Right. Wow.
But ayahuasca, they call ayahuasca the gentle grandmother. They call ibogaine the angry grandfather.
Okay.
Because ibogaine, it can get bumpy. I felt the happiest I've ever felt in my life on ibogaine, and I felt the most fear I've ever felt. I felt the most anger I've ever felt. But it's all for a lesson, right? You come out the other side better. Ayahuasca, I don't have the personal experience yet, but I think it's a little bit more gentle. What ibogaine does that ayahuasca doesn't is it's proven by Stanford University to actually take scar tissue off the brain, grow gray matter, which in theory would prevent dementia.
Right.
And then it also, if you're familiar with addiction receptors, right? So if you smoke a cigarette, drink a coffee, which we both drank today, whatever.
I almost said that's insane, but I was probably appropriate to describe it like that.
No, it is insane. And then it goes, so your addiction receptors are off, right? But when you consume something, that addiction receptor, they get shut on, okay? So now, especially with something like opioid or nicotine, right? So you'll have these receptors, and those receptors want the substance. And when they don't get the substance, the brain's going to do stuff to the body to make you know what I mean? The brain's going to get what it wants. So ibogaine can actually go in and shut those off. So I was a 2-pack-a-day smoker before I went to ibogaine, smoked 4 cigarettes watching the sun go down, and that was my last cigarette. I've taken opioid addicts there and gotten them off opioids overnight. They can actually get you off of opioids there with no withdrawal. They can detox you on site, and then they can start treating you with ibogaine, and you can come off of opioids with virtually no withdrawals.
What is it about these journeys that you take, right? The DMT and the things I can't even pronounce. Like, what is it that makes you better? Because I remember you telling me, you showed me a picture of the before and after of your face before and your face after, and like when you first said, I'm going to show you a couple of pictures, right? And I was like, all right, show me pictures. I was like, holy shit, that's right. That's way different.
4 days.
Yeah. So what is it about this process, this journey, these things that you put in your body? What is it about that makes you better? Like where do you go?
Question.
Like I don't even want to know like the science about it. I want to know like the emotion.
From my point of view in my body.
What is it that makes you better?
So with ibogaine, we'll go to the first time because like that's a huge. I mean, it's done so much for me. I have to like think. Let's go to the first time because that's going to be the most accurate, I think.
Like, are you exercising demons? Like, what's going on?
Oh yeah. When you take the medicine, you're sitting there. You take it in 4 doses, 4 doses, 4 or 5. So they give you the first dose, and then they wait like an hour 15, give you another dose, and then it's like every 45 or an hour or something after that. So like the first thing that happens, it's actually why I have a bee on my necklace, is you hear the bees. For me, it was. So you literally hear bees, right? And then I started hearing some tribal music, like really light. And you're like, is music on? They're like, no. And I'm like, and I stood up and I was like, whoa. Like it all, like not all hit me, but it hit me. I was like, whoa. I'm like, okay. And I could already feel that my physical coordination was going to be off. So I went up to what we call the journey room, or what I call the journey room. And so I'm going up the stairs, and it was pretty cool. A guy I met there, I looked over my shoulder at him because he was following me. I said, everything's about to come full circle, brother. The reason I said that is because I was hearing bees. I immediately lost all doubt that this wasn't going to work because I was in such a dark place. I was like, I'm going to be the first person this doesn't work for, right?
Right.
And but I don't know if this is too much for the show or not. So
nothing's too much for the show.
Okay, cool. So I actually joined the Army on an LSD trip.
Okay.
Yeah. On that LSD tab was a bee. So a bee, a psychedelic with a bee on it is what got me in the Army. And then what made me better is also closely associated with bees. So I'm like, holy cow. Like I was like, this is going to be real. So you go up, you're in this room, okay? They have a mirror in front of you. They have a mat laid out, like a mattress, a fold-out mattress, a comfy one.
Right.
Full-length mirror. It's dark, a little candle, like a cactus plant. I forget the significance of that. And you have a shaker, a Morocco or whatever, right? And you're sitting down and they have the Bwiti tribe is where Ibogaine comes from, okay? It's over in Africa, in Gamboa. So their music, they make the instruments while taking small amounts of Ibogaine. They make the music on Ibogaine. Everything's done on Ibogaine to do with the music, right? So this music's going and you're staring in a mirror and you're shaking your shaker. And then
the music,
it's tribal, but like
on the Ibogaine? What do you mean
they turn it on. Like it's on a radio in the room.
Okay.
So you're in a room blacked out, staring in a mirror, sitting on your mattress, shaking the shaker, just staring in, like it's almost like staring into your own soul. Starts to kick in, you catch some visuals, and I remember I got a little angsty. I was like, man, why are they making us do this? This is so stupid. Like started getting real like how I used to get all the time.
Right.
And it dawned on me that, I was like, oh, they said I can put it down at any time. And then it was the first time in my life that I truly internally recognized you cause a lot of your own anger. Like and project it outward. Like I'm like, they're making me do this. Ain't nobody making. So I started laughing. I was like, oh wow, like this is.
That's no realization.
Yeah, already. And I wasn't even on the full ride yet. And then the eye mask one went down, laid down. And I used to have this fear because of brain damage and stuff, and had a lot of weird fears. Right, I think most people do. I wasn't afraid of a gunfight, but I was afraid of other things. And one of the things I used to be afraid of was that my mind would go before my body, and then like I would eventually maybe hurt somebody that didn't deserve it or something one day. So like the medicine shows you me from pushing my cousin down when I was like 5, 6, 8 years old, however old I was when they were born, to, shooting people, fights, etc. Every violent thing in my life I saw like in fast forward. And I was like, oh, this didn't bother me at all. Like medicine, what are you trying to show me? Like, and then it had a woman, like a figure of a woman, like a shadow in the distance. And I felt like I knew her, but I couldn't tell you who it was. Then this big, evil, dark figure comes out to harm her. And like, I lost it. I was like, no, this isn't what I came for. Make it stop. And the medicine took the evil figure away, and the woman was like happily evaporated. And that was the medicine showing me right then and there.
You're
like,
in control.
You're in complete control, dude. Like nobody's you're not gonna lose your mind. Yes, you're a violent person. Yes, you like violence, but you only when it's necessary, right? I shouldn't, like when I say I like violence, like I think violence is a necessary thing to bring balance in the world. Like I don't want to put on gloves and punch somebody, right? But if somebody's hurting women and kids, I'd like to cancel their birth certificate in a legal scenario, right?
Sure.
So that's what it showed me off the bat, and then it was I basically did battle with my dad and defeated him, if you will, in the first round, and then then I walked into this other room. And I'm very close with the women in my life, my mom, my aunt, my sister, everybody's in this room, my bestie, everybody. And I'm like, oh, wow, like everybody's here. This is so good. I feel all this love. This was wild. My grandmother was like off in a corner. I'm like, Grandma, what are you doing? Come over here with us. And she's like, I don't feel well. And I was like, what's wrong? And she just died. And I was seeing her soul go to heaven. And I felt what you would feel, right? Terrible, horrible. And then she said, I don't hurt anymore. And that was lifted. And then it was probably 6 months after that, she went in for a bladder infection, had cancer, and died. Yeah.
Wow.
But yeah, it was heavy, man. It was heavy. So it was like, dealt with that. That was a lot to carry first time doing it. I didn't tell my mom about that until she went to the hospital.
Yeah, so it sounds like to me, like all these sessions that people can go to a psychiatrist for, that this just cycles you through all that.
Oh, bro.
In a very short period of time.
Yeah.
That kind of makes more sense now how
it
that
allows
can
you to
relieve
process
a lot for you. Yeah. So you really attribute a lot of like all this to like your well-being now.
Oh, 100%. And
right?
I do believe counseling definitely has its place, right? It wouldn't be good. Definitely wouldn't get the most benefit to just randomly take a psychedelic without setting
like
intentions. Exactly.
Yeah.
You need that rudder, dude. And I mean, you can, there's coaches for it. There's counselors for it. Leading up to it, but you need to get things to the surface. Like, they give you a couple, Ambio gives you a couple counseling sessions over the phone. So you can say like, hey, my intentions is to let go of addictions, to find peace, to want to live in the moment, stuff like that, right? So you go in with these intentions, you talk about them before, and then you take this medicine and then you go on this journey. And it's incredible. And I mean, the entire night was lesson after lesson, and a lot of that journey was me being in control.
So I'm trying to I know I keep bringing up the Great White.
You're good,
right?
You're good.
Because I'm trying to draw a parallel, because I think there is one to your basically your Great White journey right now, and all this other stuff that you've been through. Mostly, I mean, I don't even want to say like recently, but mostly like the collective of your entire life, right? And I really see your Great White journey as like an amalgamation of that. I don't know if I said that word right, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like a collective, like hunt, like, because, right, so we talk about this on the show a lot. Anyone who's listened to this show for years probably tired of me saying this, right? But, we always say like, oh, what is it about like, fishing and hunting and everything like that brings men together, men and women, like brings it together in a higher level way. Never hunted and fish, you don't know what I'm talking about, right? But if you have, you absolutely know what I'm talking about. There's a different kind of connection you have with the people that you do that with, right? And we've kind of over time come to the collective opinion that there's primal instinct within man, okay, that bring, and the reason I'm bringing this up again is because I really want to get your perspective on this. There's a primal instinct within man that looks at hunting and fishing, and even just the repetitive practice of this is like an evolutionary thing, right?
Oh, without
we've
a
developed
doubt.
as a species, right, through the hunter and gatherer mentality and all that, right? So we still do that as a recreational practice, and I think it's fulfilling. Because some people are like, oh, why do you hunt? Why do you fish? Well, what do you think? Great, you're catching a fish, but I think that's the reason why, right? Because I think it fulfills that primal act, like within us, right? And so you're doing this on a Great White level, right? And you're not killing them, but you are hunting them, right? And you are capturing them and tagging them, and you get that satisfaction of achievement at that primal level. Right? I want to get your perspective on all that and how that has anything to do maybe with what you've been through.
So
that's a very loaded question.
No, you're good. No, I like that. I like that question. So as far as the parallel, we touched on briefly about like white shark and a gunfighter, right? So as far as the primal instinct goes, with me specifically, my mom's side of the family did a lot of hunting and fishing. I liked the fishing when I was a kid. Never got into hunting. I was into sports and chasing girls, and my
primal instinct in that too.
Yeah, definitely. My dad, I kind of learned different things from. I kind of probably got a little aggression from that side. So that I always had a fight instinct in me. And then it kind of paralleled with the fishing, right? Because your primal instinct, it's on another level. But when you're hunting humans, which is what we did in Ranger Battalion, as grotesque as that sounds, it's exactly what we did. That's the peak. Once again, you get out of that. What do you do? And you're dealing with, the military is a big thing, right? Guys that have been in girls that have been in direct action combat make up less than 5% of that. So you're dealing with a small part of the population, right? There's not many people that hunt great white sharks either, right? So there's not many people that tag them on rod and reel, right? Like if they tag them, they're using buoys, they're hand lining, they're chumming them to the surface and tagging them. They're not fighting them on a 50 wide. So when you put a former gunfighter on the boat, Ranger or not, and you're like, hey man, this is what we're doing today. We're getting ready to go do this, and there might be one other person in the world doing this today, right? So now you're bringing that primal instinct, right? Because what all you do when you're hunting and fishing, right? You find a pattern, or develop a pattern of life. You find a weakness in that pattern, and you exploit that weakness with an ambush. That's what we did our entire military career.
Outstanding explanation.
Yeah, that's all you're doing when you're hunting and fishing. And I think people think fishing nonprofit and veterans and PTSD, and they're thinking like kumbaya, like, and there is that aspect when you're watching this, when you're riding into the sunrise, and you've got, Bob Seger playing. Yeah, dude, that's a pretty magical moment, bro. Like you don't get much better than that. Especially the Pink Floyd song "Time." That's my favorite song to watch on the
Dark Side of the Moon is the greatest album of all time.
Oh, dude.
Oh my God.
Dude.
Like we've talked about this on the show before too. Oh my God, I just gave me goosebumps when you just mentioned Time.
I love Floyd, and Time
it's a work of art from beginning to end. The entire album, but Time especially, that's the best song on the record.
Time, I think I think it's my all-time favorite song.
Taking away.
Yes, moments that make up a dull day. Dude, it's awesome, man. My favorite song to watch the sunrise to. So that part of it is the kumbaya spiritual, right?
Oh my God, dude. You just gave me the willies.
Dude, music, man, it does it for me. But then you remind these guys that we're like, hey man, like you're looking for birds. We're doing this. Look at this on the depth finder. You see that if my back is turned because I'm doing something in the cockpit, and you see that, tell me, everybody's got a job, everybody's doing their thing, and it's exactly like a squad or a team, just like it was in the military, right? So you got your primal instinct of the hunting and fishing, right? And really, our primal instinct was hunting humans, right? It's no different. It's just a little bit more complicated. Shouldn't say more complicated. It's you have to think differently, right?
Right.
But at the same time, that's where it really goes in with fishing. And for me, the white shark, what parallels into that is taking these guys out there that have done what less than 1% of the world's population will ever do, and let them do something that special again. That's incredible, right? Because it's I shouldn't say it's easy to find purpose, but you can find your purpose, right? But there's especially
attainable.
Yeah, and a lot of guys haven't gone the psychedelic route yet, which it makes it harder to heal. And I think it's hard for guys a lot of times to look back, even if they're doing well in the civilian world and stuff, and be like, holy cow, man, just 10 years ago I was kicking indoors and parachuting out of airplanes and getting in gunfights, and now I'm driving a car to work every day, and I drive home, and I go to the gym, and it's just
it's different.
It's very and there's nothing wrong with average, man. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's hard to go from you walking around, you're the top of the food chain. Like it was insane.
I mean, if you think about it, like okay, so I mean, I worked in the music business for my jobs that I've had in my life. I've worked in a surf shop. Best job I've ever had in my entire life. I was a teenager, all the hot girls coming in. Like, best job ever. And then I went, after art school, I went and I worked in the music business for 17 years, working directly with all these major record labels and stuff like that.
I didn't know you did that.
Yeah, and then I left. My wife and I had 2 kids. I left and I opened up my own art studio. So it's like, and it hasn't all been peaches and cream. You know what I mean? So it's like there's been a lot of struggle. A lot of physical struggle, a lot of psychological struggle, a lot of health struggle throughout that entire time. And I discussed that. And it's like, I do it's funny because, and I'm sure a lot of the audience can relate to this too. Like a lot of the things you're saying, maybe not to the extreme level that you've experience, right? But on some psychological or emotional level, they get it. You know what I mean? And I think there's more out there than people realize that do get what you're saying. And that was one of the biggest reasons why I want to bring you here, just kind of and talk through all this stuff like that, because I think there's a lot of people out there that need to hear what you're saying, right? But I always said, like, you know, after experiencing the first couple of successful years coming out into the studio, man, I'll never have a regular job again, right? So I'm 51, and then I think about that all the time, like, man, like, you know, like what I went through like all the last year and like closing down our studio location, and I went through my dark period, and like you think about like, man, should I just end it? You know, not the life, but the business, you know, should I just stop it? Or, you know what I mean? Or am I going to just pull up my bootstraps and we're going to, like, you know, figure out, you know, how we're going to move on successfully? And we have figured that out since then. And we're in a much brighter place at the moment, which is great, right? But, you know, you start thinking like, man, am I going to have to get a job? I promised myself I'd never get a job again, you know? And then, so I can relate to that. Like, if you start doing the 9 to 5 and like that, like, how would that make me feel? It'd feel good that I'm supporting my family, and I probably made the right decision for them if I had to make that decision, which I don't have to.
Right.
You know what I mean? Thank God. Thank you, God.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like, but if I did, there'd be levels of satisfaction that I'm taking care of my family and doing the right thing, but also personally for me, did I fail? You know what I mean? All these other demons start creeping in. So,
well, and like, those demons, that's the ego, right?
Yes.
That's the ego.
Well, that's what I said. Let me end every show. Your ego's not your ego, right? This is the point we try to get to. Like, every time we talk, you know, it's like, it's important, right? Your ego.
That's all it is, man. And that's why, like, when we go to places like Ambia, like, you hear a lot in the psychedelic treatment stuff. It's ego death, ego dissolution, because that's your biggest competition's yourself. You know, I shared something on
100%.
Yeah, man.
100%.
It's, and I always, the first thing I tell
oh my
folks
God,
I'm helping,
100%.
I'm always like, whenever you're pointing at something that pisses you off or you're judging something, you know, don't forget the old saying that there's 3 fingers pointed right back at you.
Yeah. And you know what? Sometimes it's a good thing.
Yes.
It's not always a negative.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a good thing. You just got to balance that line.
And it's I think if we spend a lot more time looking within for answers instead of outside for answers, things would be a lot better. And killing that ego is key. I mean, it's a thing, man. It's a thing.
Yep. Yeah, it really is. You know, I was at a retreat. This is where I came up with the whole your ego is your amigo. I didn't come up with it. A friend of mine did. And his name is Mike G. And I don't know his last name. Everyone just calls him Mike G because he's like this little Indian dude, an Indian from India, the country, from Guyana, right? Because there's a lot of Indian influence in Guyana in South America, right? And we were at a retreat. We're Catholic. It was like a Catholic weekend and everything like this. It's called Emmaus, right? And it's a really great thing if you're an adult male Catholic. You know what I mean? I highly suggest everybody do an Emmaus. It's very cleansing. It's a very good spiritual weekend. And you know, he kind of got to me and he's like, Dennis, your ego is not your amigo. Just like that.
That's
right?
awesome.
I was like, what? That's great. And he goes, always just do your best and then just let God do the rest. Like that. And I'm like, and that sealed the weekend for me when he said that, because whatever that meant to me when he said that was the problem that I was having. You put too much on your own shoulders, you know what I mean? You want to be the best, and what does the best mean? You want to provide for your family, you want to prove to whatever, all the different reasons why being the best is a necessity, right? And in doing what I do as an artist, right, there's always that strive to make the next piece better than the last piece and always be the best that you could be. And you know what I mean? Then demons creep in and it's like, well, you know, and every artist faces this. And if you don't, then you're full of shit. Like, if you don't admit it, you're full of shit. Like you want to be like the best artist in the world, right? You should want that. You know what I mean? It's like you try to do as good as you can do. And you know what I mean? That's why we're here. You know, just try to, you know, but you got to respect your other artists. You got to respect other guys that are doing it too. You know, that's ultimately the conclusion you got to come to, right? But your ego's not your amigo. Always do your best and let God do the rest. And so I was like, I'm ending I was just starting the podcast then. This was before episode 1. Like, it was like
awesome.
the week before episode 1.
That is awesome.
And I had Vinny LaSource on, the captain, Jimmy Buffett's boat captain, coming on as the first guest. And I was like, I'm ending every episode like that. And we have ever since then. We're going to end today's episode by me saying
that's awesome.
Right? And it's just really makes everything make sense to me.
Yeah, it's probably the biggest bugaboo in humanity, really.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Wars are fought over egos.
Yeah.
I mean, money too, but what's money driven by? Ego.
Right.
I mean,
exactly.
it's a crazy thing, and it's not something that comes easy, and it's not something once you accept that your ego is not your amigo and to let God control things. It's not like, oh, well, everything's peachy. You know, I was having to, you know, this morning I was doing some work from my phone, and, you know, Not Lucky's young. You know, the nonprofit's young. We turn 2 next month from doing this full time. So I haven't been in this 2 years yet.
What is the name of the nonprofit?
Not Lucky.
Not Lucky.
Not
okay.
KNOTLUCKY.
Okay.
Yep.
Right.
So it's young. So obviously we don't do well financially, right? And like my whole thing is I get through, because I have some people close to me, they obviously don't know details of vets I deal with and stuff. And to be clear, if anybody listening to this show's a vet, you can come fishing with me in Savannah for free. Vet, active duty, whatever. This isn't a thing where you get on the boat and it necessarily means there's some kind of issue, right? Like, you know, I have people that come fish with me once and I never see them again. I have that come fishing with me every couple months and I see them only then, and then I have some that show up and don't leave. Yeah, it's just kind of, you know, it's just kind of come one, come all type of thing. Very chill atmosphere. But you know, this morning I'm like going over stuff and everything, and I'm like, man, we're like sucking really bad on money. It's not a new thing. Not a new, we've been doing it the whole 2 years. So, and it was funny because I started feeling stress, and it started to turn into anxiety, which is a really weird thing for me these days.
Okay.
I'm not an anxious person anymore. Not going to say I don't feel stress. I definitely feel stress, but it's more of a positive stress, right?
Yeah.
And I process it, let it run through me, do what it's got to do, and then give it to God. But this morning, I really had to remind myself of that because I caught myself getting caught up again, right? And I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh man, I've got to do this. I've got to do this. I've got to do this. And I'm showering and I'm like, oh man, you know, I'm like, oh my gosh, am I like getting ready to start shaking? And I'm sitting there and I was like, what are you doing, dude? Like, pump the brakes. Like, you preach all the time, God's in control. Like, you've been way broker than this before. Like, you know what I mean? Personally, I'm always broke because I don't get paid anymore. I live off the disability check from the Army or retirement check, whatever you want to call it. But it's like, I've gotten myself out of way worse holes than this. Like, this is going to pass. Everything's going to work out. Just let it go.
The shoe shall pass.
But it's, man, but it's, you know, but it's a thing you've got to stay on top of, man. And like, I think, you know, I think a lot of people dealing with mental health stuff, right? And God and religion or whatever you're dealing with, you know, I think a lot of it is, people think that once you get to a point, right? I think people see me putting happy posts up and things like that. And like, oh, you should, you know, I live like this and maybe you should try it because it's awesome. It's not always peaches and cream, right?
No.
It's a constant work.
It's not.
Yeah, and it gets easier, right? It gets to a point where you'd be like, for a while, you're like, oh, this is awesome. And then you run into another little challenge, but that challenge was easier than the last. The next one might be a little harder, but that space between challenges is just beautiful. And even the challenges itself, right? You know, my good buddy, Ryan Davis, you know, he's the dude that got blown up in 2019, lost 2 legs and an arm and half of his hip. He told me that all, like, the hardest things, right? Because Army Rangers are pretty hard. We're all forged by fire. So the challenges should be challenging, but that's what makes the good times so much easier and so much nicer. You know, before April of 23, I mean, I told you a few weeks or a month or whatever after I tagged that first white shark, I was watching the trailer every morning because it was like, I didn't believe I did it. And you can't live like that.
Yeah, and you gotta, sometimes you can look at it like a chart, like an elevation chart, right? No elevation chart goes straight up and just keeps going. Everything has a little dip, and then it goes back up again. Everything
just
has
like
a little
the tide.
Yeah, just
just like the
has a little
tide,
dip
man.
and keeps going. Yeah, but you just got to make sure that those little dips don't become Free falls.
Yep.
Right.
You don't want to lay down when you hit your rock bottom, because I think everybody hits their own rock bottom at some point in their life.
Yep.
But you can't lay down when you get there. You've gotta get up, and it's one thing I pride on what we do is the folks we do help. Rather, a lot of the people I help, it's actually just over the phone. But the ones I actually get to interact with on a personal level, it's really, it's challenging to help the hardest to help, and that's really what we set out to do. That's what I told Greg from the get-go, and all my people close to me. I was like, guys, I want to help the people that nobody really knows how to help, right? The solution to everybody is some antidepressants and some benzos and the Adderall to counteract that, and then call it a day, especially in the veteran world, because that's much more profitable. But going after the ones that are hardest to help, we even went as far as we had a guy that was facing 9 years. Okay, he
facing what?
Facing 9 years in prison.
9 years.
Yeah,
okay.
This guy had been shot in the face, and he's actually talked about it openly a little bit. In 2010, he was shot in the face in an ambush in Afghanistan. A Navy SEAL left him by himself in an ambush. It was chaotic. An interpreter got hit. The Navy SEAL was like, stay here, guard the rear. I'm sending somebody back. He didn't send somebody back. The unit moved on. My buddy's here getting shot at. He's a sniper, so he has a long gun instead of an M4. The mountains in Afghanistan are like Colorado. I mean, it's steep. So he ends up getting in a little shootout with the guy. Thought he hit the guy because the guy went down. He's running. He looks back over. The guy's got a bead on him. He never hears the shot. Hits him in the face. Spins him around. Down a mountain. He tumbles about 300 feet.
Ugh.
Loses his rifle.
Ugh.
Ends up landing on his feet. Runs into a bush. And is like, gets his pistol out. Knocks the dirt out of it. And is like, gets on the radio. He's gargling. He sees a bone sticking out and arterial bleeding. And they just told him we moved north. And he had a wrist compass on his Timex, and he shot it north, right? So he goes north, and he had to go over 400 meters. He's having out-of-body experiences, seeing himself run. He's like, I just got to get my body back to my family. He thought he was dead, and he was shot in the face. So they get him back. He gets back to the unit. He calls up, yo, I'm coming up. He's running up, opens his arms for a guy to grab him, throws him on the ground. The guy lights up two Taliban that were about to capture him about 30 feet away. Yeah. Then they load him on the medevac next to his dead buddies.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Man.
Then he comes home and didn't have the spousal support that one should have. Well, it's the worst situation I've ever heard of in my life. We'll just leave that there. And he ended up having a mental breakdown, and was not at anybody, shooting at anybody, but he discharged his firearm into his car door in a residential neighborhood. Yeah, so not great.
Right.
Not great, right? Dude had never been in trouble in his life. Nothing. I call him one of the sweet Rangers. There was 3 Army Rangers I said were so sweet that I didn't know how they did the job. Yeah. One died in a parachute accident, Ethan. And then Chris Decker died last year in a motorcycle accident. So my buddy's my last sweet Ranger. So I get a phone call. This is in June of 23. 3 days before our first event, fundraiser. And I literally had just gotten off the road, been off the road from an hour from spending 4 days with the dude's mom. We named the first white shark after Chris Wright. Which was very emotional. Nice. Yeah, it was cool. It was cool, but it was a hard trip, man. So I get up to go to the gym, get a phone call, and they're like, "Hey, is this Jimmy?" And I'm like, "Yeah." It's kind of weird, And they're like, "Is this Eric's buddy?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He was like, "He said you're the most dependable guy he knows." And I'm like, "Oh, this guy's getting ready to ask me for something." Right. And I was like, "Oh, did he?" I was like, "What's up, buddy? What do you need?" And he's like, "He's in jail. He just called and resigned from his job." This guy worked with him. Okay. And was like, just hung up and said, "You'll never see me again." I get on the phone, call a close friend of mine, old Lauren Tigner. She's an attorney. Boom, comes over, find out where he's at, $75,000 bail, put the house up for collateral, make a ton of phone calls, get the money together, lawyer up, moved him in, started him in treatment, had him group therapy, one-on-one therapy with a proven counselor, AA, moved him in, man, took him fishing, and he's doing better than he's done his entire life.
This is Connected by Water, right?
Yeah.
So this is why we named our whole company this. This is why we named the show this, right? Because we wanted to bring on examples, and this is basically the basis of the show. You just took it to like a mega level, right? So no, but you did, but this is always what we want to say. Like, there's a deeper aspect to what we do, like fishing, and whether it's hunting, mostly fishing, but like it's like, you know, and how water and Connected by Water and the ocean and fishing and all that, there is a higher level to it, you know. And I love hearing stories about how people can take all the different aspects of life, and it's all connected by water, right? It all brings it under that umbrella and that fold, and really, it's tough to define, right? But there's like this other dimensional layer to it, to where it just, let's say, makes everything better, but it connects man, right? And it connects people, and it can be used as a conduit for, like what you're saying, for healing, right? And I love that you're doing that. I love that you're using it for a conduit for healing, right? And it's I mean, what you're doing purpose-wise, we talk about purpose on the show all the time. What you're doing purpose-wise is just priceless, right? And I hope people hear this and support your nonprofit more, and support your endeavor and what you're doing, because it's so important what you're doing. And it's probably tough for people to truly understand without hearing your entire story, right? And that's really ultimately what I wanted you to do today, and what you did today. Is like, you came and you didn't tell your entire story, but you gave like the Cliff Notes version of how you got to this point where you're at, right? You personally are in a better place, right? You're taking your experience and your journey and your timeline, right? And you're trying to implement into others that are going through similar things, right? You're like, okay, you've experienced success in this line, right? At whatever level, but it's success, right? And you're trying to bring that success to others who've gone through what you've gone through, right? Through fishing, right? Through these journeys, but not just fishing, but all the other steps that need to be taken, and bringing it under the fold of being like connected by water through some aspect of it, right? So I admire you, and I commend you for your efforts. I mean, when I say you're my hero, right? It's not just because of the things you've done for our country. It's for the things you're doing for your fellow man.
I appreciate
it's selfless.
Thank you.
Right? And it's something that most of America, most of the people on this planet won't do, is what you're doing. You're doing the hard work. You're doing the non-glorious work. You know, and it's so fucking cool, dude.
I appreciate that.
You know, and you know, I love you.
Love you, brother.
You know, and it's just it's amazing. So, how can people get in touch with your organization if they want to help? I hope people hear this, and you're going to get contacted by somebody that wants to help.
Yeah. Well, and so notlucky.org. There's all the information there that you need. You can donate there. If it's somebody trying to reach me directly, I always put my phone number out there. So it's 540 535 8426.
Okay.
I put my phone number out there. Just guys, gals, if you're a vet, you know, if non-vets hit me up, I talk to them too. I'm not a jerk, but you know, that's more getting people in the right direction. I'll talk to anybody to help them. But I can't expend resources outside of my bylaws, of course. But it's, please reach out to me. If you need help or want to help, either way, if it involves help, reach out to me directly. Give me a call, shoot me a text. Notlucky.org, you can get on there. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.
I would even take that a step further too. Not that I know, but I can imagine if you're a veteran that you're going through things in your head, I would just say, just go fishing with you. No
Yeah.
pressure and
No,
having
we
them
don't have to
feel
talk
like
about
you need to talk
anything.
about anything.
No.
Right? Just take that first step. I think that first step's the hardest, I would imagine.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So at the very least, go fishing with you.
Yeah, you
They're
get a
gonna
free
feel,
fishing trip.
Yeah, they're going to feel comfortable. They're going to have a good time. And then maybe, hopefully, that's the first step to, whatever, opening a line of communication with you.
It opens the line of communication, and a big, it's a very, fishing with Not Lucky is an amazing first step. One, the first step is hard. Two, you're not going to get much of a better feeling than going offshore, whether it's your first time or you've been 100 times.
Yeah.
You know that. Like, once you break land, there's no cell service, especially if the fish are biting. You're just connected by the water to God, really, when you're out there.
And that's it. And hopefully on the way back after a cool day of fishing, you catch a crazy sunset. And you'll say thanks to God.
Yeah,
And
that's what it's all about.
Right on. All right. Well, your ego
is not your amigo.
Right? Always do your best, and then just let God do the rest. And do not ever forget that no matter where we are, no matter what we're doing, we're all connected by water. Jimmy or Armel, you're a badass.
Thanks, brother.
Right.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate you.
Awesome.